Good morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser. We are back on a Wednesday. These boys were here last week as well, but now I'm back in action on vacation. So John can no longer talk shit on air. But it is Wednesday. As always, we're brought to you by Reckless Coffee Roasters. Number one greatest dad is back. So Gordo, who was one by default last week, has gone back to two. What is happening?
I'm feeling the demotion. I really am. It's been a tough week. I'll get over it.
Who's gonna feel more pain is John over here, the shit talker. Thinking once I go to the beach, I don't have access to the rest of the show. It's more like that. For those of you who do not know, apparently John doesn't, but if you don't catch us live, you can always go back to the YouTube channel and watch the rest of the show.
Forgot about that little thing about looking at the replay of the clip and everything. It's funny because I'm the one who does the clips, right? And I don't know this. Right?
I knew that you saying that you were heading to the beach was a trap. For sure.
Yeah. Or am I?
Yeah, or am I?
But good to be back in action. A lot is happening. Things are picking up. Obviously, we're coming to the end, towards the end of the tournaments, which kind of helps, I think, everything else. Some of these guys are already back and stuff like that. Camp starting, training, all that kind of stuff. Press conferences, all the good stuff. So let's start with a couple of headlines over here. Not this one, but this one. So we were talking about this, I think maybe like a month ago when he came out, and he was a little critical of how he was handled, his price tag and stuff like that. More than how he was handled, I think he was not happy with this price tag because it was going to kind of like scare off some teams. Now we're finding he has really impressed on his slot. I don't know how much to buy into this. Okay, I guess I'll ask you, Gordo. How much do you buy into that, or is this Liverpool playing the game where we're like, oh, we don't have to sell him. We really like him, and then to increase his price.
I think it's more of the latter, right? You like put him in the window, and like, oh, well, why does Liverpool value him so highly? And it ups his value. It also kind of sparks something under him too, right? Because you've got an everybody right now has a clean slate. And or a clean slot, I should say, and everyone has a chance to. Everyone has a chance.
Hold on, I gotta go over here and do this.
But so like it's anybody has a chance to impress the new manager. So you say something like that to the media, and it might light a fire under a player that. Obviously we valued him at some point because we purchased him. We've kept him on the books for this long. So, go out there and see what you can do in the friendly, see what you can do in the pre-summer camp, and maybe it comes to value. If not, like I said, you put him in the shop window and maybe increase his value in the transfer market.
Yeah, I guess in some ways there's not much to lose, right? So what did we say, like 20 or something? I think was the rumor that we said 20. So even if he sucks in preseason, we would probably go back to getting what we would probably originally get, 10, 12, John. But if he does really well, and we really had no intention of keeping him, we might actually be more realistic in getting that 20 maybe.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm kind of looking at it more that maybe he has a realistic shot, because I don't know if you guys caught the news that Reece Williams, Nat Phillips, and Billy Kumieto is on the way out. So that's like three slots. I'm sorry.
Oh my God. It's going to be...
You notice I hesitated because I was like, it just came from Gordon, and I was like, the wound is still fresh, and then I wanted to add more salt to it, But yeah, that's three center back bodies that we're gonna be losing that aren't necessarily gonna be used. But then in terms of him being a Dutch player, right? Him being able to speak the language with our gaffer, I don't know it. There might be a chance. I feel like if we see him string one or two good performances in the preseason, maybe he might, kind of force himself into that fifth choice, because we are obviously going to go for someone, at least I would think, to be that Matip replacement, right? So that's 4 people now in the first choice. I just don't know if he wants to be a fringe guy. like that fifth choice coming in, the insurance policy, because obviously at this point in his career, he'd want to be starting teams. He'd want to be starting games for a club, every single week. So it's obviously a conundrum. It's just me looking at it from the glass half full perspective. But at the end of the day, I feel like he's probably going to be sold. It's just a shame because we never really kind of looked into him like thoroughly, didn't we? Like when we signed him in 2020, we were like, oh, okay, we got this kid coming in. Then we loaned him out again, loaned him out. Like he never really got a shot, right? Like considering what happened to Kwanzaa, like maybe we can roll him in for the first few cup games and then in the League Cup, depending on the opposition, then see in the January transfer window, maybe if his value is possibly increased, or is it just the same, then we can sell him off? I don't know. It's just, I feel like we haven't really gotten a proper look in for the kid.
See, I don't know. Like, I think I can't even remember. I mean, so you might be right because I can't even remember.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when he first came over. I don't know why, but it was like, oh, he's huge. He's going to be great, blah, blah, blah. Like a young kid we signed promising and all that. I even remember watching stuff where he meets Klopp, and I was like, holy shit, this dude is bigger than Klopp kind of a deal.
Yeah.
But, we did watch some games. I can't remember if it was preseason Gordo and if it was like a League Cup games or something like that. But he looked, when I was watching him then, he looked awfully slow for the system to play center back. Like it took forever for him to turn around. He was a little Nat Phillips like in that sense. And obviously he was a lot younger. He didn't have the physicality at least you get from Nat Phillips either. Like, the balls he can win in the air and stuff like that. You were not getting them either. I know he's had some good spells and he's played more like right back and stuff like that, which was when I first started he's playing right back. I'm like, how the hell did he look so slow? So maybe we have not seen him since he's more like grown into his body and matured as a player, or is he like just like, would he be okay with an insurance policy kind of a positioning in the team?
Well, like John said, I mean, we've pretty much cleared house at the center back position, so it wouldn't be a huge loss.
We even miss those guys, though. I mean, really, I know everybody wanted Nat Phillips to put his head everywhere. But aside from that,
out of context, that sounds so wrong.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Yeah. God damn it, John. But that's not taken out of context, dang it. Okay. But I mean, those guys, they're gone, but were they there? I mean, did we even say, well, worst case scenario, Nat Phillips will come in? Not really. We didn't even count on it.
Like, we don't see them, but they're in training. So you've got like this big group of center backs that are like,
hey guys.
Hey, where you going?
Yeah. The little clique has gotten a lot smaller now. So, I mean, like, maybe there's, in terms of like pecking order, because that's basically how it operates in that sense is, you've got several guys in front of you that you have to leapfrog in order to even get a look at, maybe even being third choice, fourth choice center back. Now you've cleared the way, and now there's not as many hurdles to jump over. We don't have to pay anything for him because we've already got him on the books. He's essentially a new signing because maybe he's played 60 minutes total in the time he's been here in a Liverpool shirt. I couldn't even tell you what kind of games he played, but I do know that he has made his debut for first team. I just don't know how many minutes he's actually played for us. And like John said, you get a young guy coming in and we haven't really given him a fair shot, in my opinion. And, we can move him on, but in that sense, it's bad business because we bought him. He had like, I was impressed by him too, because he was a large kid. There was a lot of good things said about him coming through the youth leagues, and I was excited to play him. And so for us to buy him, have this big, fanfare around him and not give him a fair shot and then move on, it just doesn't, that's bad business.
Yeah, for Liverpool, he played
4 times, I see.
Yeah, he played mostly U21s for 270 minutes in total.
Well, U21s, right? But like
he's played
for the first team, he played once in the FA Cup, thrice in the League Cup. When in the season we won the league, so that was it.
Okay, and I think those are the games that I'm referring to in terms of like remembering him. Sparky says, "New manager, new chance." I'm gonna get back to that. So let's talk about Phillips's head and where it fits and goes and stuff. Phillips has determination that all the players should have. I understand that, but that does not make a Liverpool player. I'll have all the determination in the world, but you don't want me in the starting 11. I mean, all that we get back. We've talked about this with Nunez and stuff in the past. So it's like, what do you work so hard? I mean, I work hard too, but
In
you have to
terms
give
of
me a certain level. Go ahead.
in terms of an insurance policy, though, Tim, like a player like Nat Phillips isn't exactly bad as a break glass in case of emergency player.
But why? If he doesn't fit the system, why?
True. Which is why I'm kind of making the case for Sepp here, because he's good on the ball, right? He's tall. We don't know about his speed yet because we haven't really seen him in terms of how he's played even during his loan spell. So maybe like what Sparky's saying, new manager, new chance. And these first few games in the preseason, I feel like are going to be big for him, honestly, in terms of, because with Kwanzaa, granted, that's a different situation, right? He came in as an emergency. He was kind of a break glass in case of emergency option with Konate injured. Verge kind of got that red card against Newcastle. He was kind of thrown in there, literally into the fire, and he was solid. So maybe in a less stressful situation, maybe Vandenberg can kind of show up there and go like, "Hey, I'm decent too,"
See, with Kwanzaa, though, I almost got the feeling that, you see some stuff on the training pitch. I mean, he leaped over everybody else, all these guys that you guys counted as leaving. He leaped all over them just because, A, he fits the system, and B, obviously he has the quality, and he probably showed it on the training pitch. Like, hey, this guy's a very viable option. How much, John, you mentioned it, so let's go to you. Because I'll be honest with this, but maybe it might be different in my situation. The whole Dutch aspect. Do we put too much or way too much stock into this? Do they even care? Because I can tell you from personal experience, as a Turkish dude, when you meet Turkish people like out of the country and stuff, I am slightly offended by the fact that they assume we should just be like the best pals ever. Because aside from a common language and passport, we really don't have anything in common. If we're in Istanbul, I probably would not talk to you. So why would I hang out with you over here, kind of thing? You're still like really a dude to me until you're like a cool dude. It's like, oh, like Turkish familiarity and stuff. But sometimes people take that to the extreme and they're like, we should be best pals. We have the same passport, kind of a thing. Do you think, it's not like we have so many German players over the last 8-9 years. The club is German. Is it like overrated that we're like, Van Dijk is Dutch? This guy is Dutch and stuff like that.
I feel like it's a case by case basis because with Rafa, you can clearly see the Spanish influence. We had Pepe Reina, Luis Garcia, Xabi Alonso, all those guys, literally handpicked by not Alonso, but some of them handpicked by Rafa himself, right, to come in and sort of influence our squad. With Klopp, I don't think it would have been too much of a deal. I don't know our new gaffer yet, so I can't really say too much. Like I've only known him 2 interviews, 1 press conference and 1 interview. So that's all. I don't really know the guy. As to your point, Tim, about like knowing people, I don't really know the guy yet. But in terms of a face value, in terms of Vandenberg's situation, obviously he didn't get a look in with Jurgen. So maybe the fact that he speaks the same language, maybe it might help his case, because with him, it's just the very finest margins that he needs in terms of probably being given a chance, right? Like, oh, maybe we speak the same language. Like maybe I can convince this guy, show him my qualities, and he can communicate to me better because we speak the same language on the training pitch and what I need to improve, what's good, what I need to work on and stuff like that. That's how I'm seeing it. But at the end of the day, I feel like it might be a little bit overrated, to ask your question. Like, we're only talking about the fact that Gakpo might start on his setup because Gakpo is in form, right? And Gakpo, like even under Klopp, he was starting towards the end of the season and he's showing it off at the Netherlands. So I don't think it plays a big of a part, but if I was Sepp Vandenberg personally, I would feel a little sense of encouragement because his like basis is rock bottom. He never got a look in with Klopp, right?
Sergi says, when I meet other Brits out here, it's great. We spend the first minutes talking shit about the way Americans speak. And see, like, that's what I mean. Like, I avoid that like the plague because I see it over here. They're like, I sense an accent. And then, like British people or Irish, you can kind of like tell accents, like they're from the old country and the conversation stuff. I can kind of tell sometimes that somebody's Turkish by the way they speak English. And, that's more like a deterrence, if you will, instead of me going and be like, hey, you sound Turkish, are you? First of all, it could be embarrassing. He's going to be like, no, I'm from Syria or something. And then they're like, oh, okay. And then what? I'm going to be like, oh, Okay, well, sorry. That just like then we have not even the passport in common, kind of a thing. But I wanted to talk about this because Sparky says the preseason will be big for him. No Virgil or Konate on preseason tour, and go to at the end of the day. Is that basically the deal? They looked around. They're like, "Holy shit, we don't have anybody left to take." Hey, Sep, why don't you come with us, man? We really like you, and then just like take him over there.
Yeah, it's one of those where you watch Montip go, you wave him goodbye, you close the door, you turn around and go, oh shit, we've only got one, two, three center backs. All right, well, we kind of need you just to hang around. We're going to America.
You can carry the suitcases. Amina Hussein says, any update from Gordon? I don't think we're going to get anything till England is done with the tournament personally. If anything at all. I don't think we're going to get an update from that. I am all for it, but there's another thing. I mean, you would assume that if Gordon is coming, obviously somebody's leaving, and that somebody is probably Diaz. So that's not going to happen either because he's playing. They're both players are playing semifinals today. So I thought that's going to happen. But have no fear. Signings are here. We signed the kids.
He just looks like an AI generated human, right? Like I had to go look him up and be like, he can't actually look like that, right?
That was a horrible Photoshop, to be fair.
It's awful.
That looks like I made it. So it's that bad. But I don't know, man. You see YouTube videos. I saw a couple of clips and stuff. I know about you, Gordo. I just cannot. Maybe it's the old cynical bastard in me, but I just cannot get excited about, they signed the young phenom. Because as you get older, these phenoms, you never hear of list gets longer and longer and longer. So I really find it hard to get excited until you see them. Even like some of the kids that we saw in the League Cup final, for example, I'm happy for them. But aside from like Bradley, I don't know if I took any of them as these guys are going to be here for a while.
Yeah, we said that even before that game kicked off when we saw the lineup. It's just
I mean, his parents probably. I don't know what to tell you. But I mean, the head is his. They didn't make the head.
Maybe Matt Phillips slid in there. What is that? Anyway,
kid, he didn't even make it here yet. He's getting like slammed. Jesus.
No, but we said that before that game even kicked off and we saw the lineup. This is more of like a, hey, I made it. I think I'm playing first 10 minutes. I'm probably not going to stay here, but I can make it at a team that's probably championship level or something and be a starter. So I don't think we expected too much from that. I'm the same way because I mean, you look at all like the great like U18, U21 Youth Cup, like FA Cup champions and stuff like that, or these teams where they blow through the competition. They're scoring 7 goals or whatever a game, and you never see them play. And then in 20 years, you get one of those like clickbaity BBC articles. It's like, where are they now? And it's like, he's a grocer in Leicester, and like what? He won the Youth FA Cup. Like his future was so bright. Now he runs a Tesco. So.
I'm the same way. You're young, John. So your list is not that long yet. Do you like get excited when you see clips of how old is this kid? 15 or something like that, right? 15 or 16, I think. 2008. So he is 16. Well, it depends on his birthday, I guess. But you get excited seeing YouTube clips of a 16-year-old, even though, I mean, he's highly regarded and everything. Like, it's not like, we just find a 16-year-old. So I do get all that, but I just find it, like I say, it could be just being the old bastard that I am that get excited about the signing, because then wake me up when we actually see him make this starting 11.
Yeah, it's a good to have kind of deal, but then it's not really like the be all end all of everything. Like obviously you wish he works out because it looks like the academy so far has produced a decent number of players that can be serviceable at the very least, and at the most first team options like Connor Bradley. So we're kind of hoping that for this guy kind of rubs off on him. And then Matush touches here about breaking the wage structure. Yeah, we kind of did put our cards on this guy and then just go all in. So it does say something that the likes of our executives, the people behind the scenes, kind of rate him highly.
I think that almost makes the anticipation bigger, right? Because if you just find any 15, 16-year-old, first of all, Fabrizio is not reporting on his Instagram. And then two, the fact that, I mean, we know how we run things. We are very strict in our wage structure and stuff like that. So we get rid of top players because not this. So for them to go out of their way and break the wage structure for the youth team to get this guy, should that make us extremely optimistic?
I'm not saying it's a 100% parallel, but didn't we kind of go the same route with Harvey when he played for his academy back then a few years ago? Like, he was a highly regarded youngster and everything, and we got him into the academy. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
We had to, for Harvey Elliott, we had to go to the arbitration board.
Exactly. So we kind of
jumped. We couldn't come up with a value of Fulham valued him like much higher than we wanted him. I think we had, and then they determined the price, and I think it was $4 million, right?
Yeah, something like that. I know why 4 sounded familiar. Yes.
In short, we kind of jumped through hoops to get him. Right. Definitely. Then we jumped through hoops to get him. I'm kind of getting the same vibe from this kid. Not saying, right, like, obviously this might be clipped, and in the future, oh, look at this guy saying that this guy was a Harvey Elliott, like,
Clip it.
Yeah, Harvey Elliott, like, yeah. But then I just feel like the fact that the club kind of goes all in for him, considering our track record over the last couple of seasons, might be a good sign. But then that's where I'm leaving it at, just like, okay,
so nobody's totally sold.
Something
like, okay. Yeah. A couple of things. I don't know. I saw this, and as much as I hate on the whole Suarez, obviously this goes back to the Cristiano Ronaldo thing. And where is Bishak when you need him? He's probably doing homework somewhere. But no, poor kid. His school was about to start, actually, all kidding aside, so I feel for him. But how much of a, story is that, do you think, Gordo? I think who shared this in Discord for us? Okay, so I'll ask you, because while I get the analogy, I don't put him in the same category in many ways.
Yeah, okay, he's not maybe he is an elite, right? Because
he's elite, but not Ronaldo elite. Sadly, there's only like Messi probably you can put in the same category.
I think maybe in terms of international play, he's probably maybe not his entire career, but if you look at internationally, he is Uruguay's all-time top leading goal scorer, which Ronaldo is for Portugal. And you've got one guy that did play because his tournament's over, but 486 minutes with 1 assist and a missed penalty. And then you've got Suarez, who is same age, who's played 8 minutes so far, and Uruguay is 90 minutes away from a final. So and when there's an article that was attached with that, like further down in the comments, and some of his quotes. I was telling Kelly last night on the Drinking Inside the Box podcast, it makes me so. Miami is coming to Chicago, and as much as I would not want to spend $80 to watch the Chicago Fire, his comments made me nostalgically miss Suarez and want to go see him at the end of August here in Chicago. But basically he's enjoying his football. He realizes that he says his flame is burning out, and he's just enjoying helping the next generation come through the ranks. And that is so different, because for Suarez to say this is about Uruguay and not about me, and it's a little biased because I hate him, but I know Ronaldo it's Ronaldo's Portugal, right? And he's either going to retire from international football or he's going to be starting. There's going to be no in between. And there's such a difference between those two players. I think you saw, one team, the older talismans helping in the background and taking a role, and one guy refusing to take a seat when it's probably time for him to hang up the boots.
Yeah, like I say, I do get that Suarez probably the GOAT for Uruguay, at least in this, in the last 30, 40, 50 years or whatever, and definitely doesn't have the ego of Ronaldo. I almost feel like, though, him being called up, I think him being called up, John, feels more of a, when we talked a year or two ago about, we were like, they should take Hendo anyway, just as a captain, just behind the scenes and stuff like that, even if he's not going to be playing regularly or is not, good enough or whatever. I almost feel like he was brought on as that personality who can maybe calm Nunez down or whatever, like give some tips and stuff like that and be on the sideline. And he probably knows that's why he called up, or he was told, hey, you're getting called up, but heads up, this is basically the role we want. And with Ronaldo, yes. I mean, first of all, when you make Martinez your coach, I don't know what the hell you're thinking, but especially as a national team. But I almost feel like the difference between, you watch Messi and stuff, who's the same, to me, it's the same shit, really, ultimately, because he hasn't been playing much in Major League Soccer, and he just shows up over there like he's been playing forever. He has fresh legs, I guess, because he's not playing much here. But I think in terms of styles, it just does not work, because Messi can do his normal thing and kind of like walk around so he suddenly clicks and like makes that pass or whatever. Whereas Ronaldo relied so much on his speed, agility, strength, and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, as you age, those go down. And I don't think Portugal ever made the adjustments to his changes, or maybe it's his fault. His ego is so big that he's like, no, don't make any changes. I'm just as fast.
It's a little bit of both. I feel like he should have been, which obviously egos are everything. He should have been smart enough to realize when to step down and start a certain Liverpool striker over him, Diogo Jota over him. And obviously for the Portugal staff to kind of fail to realize, like, hey, we got to talk this guy down. We got to tell him, like, hey, it's not working, man. Like, we gotta get you off the bench. As tough as that's gonna be, I do not envy the guy who's gonna have to speak to him, which comes back to your point about Martinez. You gotta get someone in there with authority. And I feel like that's the next thing for Portugal. Like, you gotta get someone in there who is not afraid to tell Cristiano, like, dude, it's not working. We need you.
Is there a guy like that?
Do you think that's the Bielsa effect then with Suarez? Because that's probably a guy that would he wouldn't take shit at all. He doesn't care who you are.
Throw the bucket at Suarez.
Right. Like,
go to the bench.
Literally, Gordon, like a respected manager who's been through it all, who's seen it all. I'm not saying that Martinez has been around, but then he kind of has this reputation as a pushover. Like he always, like, the teams that he's in, he kind of brings down a level. Like, he's had some success, but not on the level of Bielsa, where he sets a culture. He's a culture guy. Yeah, Bielsa is like a culture guy, kind of like a club. So that respect.
I mean, because I think when Bielsa walks into a room, it's holy shit. It's Bielsa.
Absolutely.
When Martinez walks into a room, he's like, "Hey, this is the guy who couldn't win with Belgium, right?" Like,
this is the guy that held, what was it, a 2-hour press conference about what he does, like why he watches other people's training sessions. Like, this guy doesn't fuck around.
Yeah.
This guy shows up with his Home Depot bucket and looks through the training, watches other trainings. I don't know if anyone else does it.
Yeah, I mean, I get the whole manager thing. I just don't think, like, is there a coach that can go to Argentina right now and say, even if Bielsa is there? Or does Messi bring more to the table right now than Ronaldo does, for example?
Absolutely.
So he won't be back.
Absolutely. Okay. You just kind of touched on it, where his play style isn't necessarily so reliant on his physical gifts, where you can cheat a little bit having him out there, not having him to track back. And I believe that's Argentina's style of play, having him in a free role kind of deal. Where
it's like, you do your thing, man. Like, we'll win the ball for you, and you do your thing is what they're playing. It feels like, but before like all the Ronaldo and Messi fanboys run over here to the comments, let's get the hell out. They'll fight in the background as we're like walking away. We're walking away with an explosion in the background, but okay. So, everybody makes a mistake. They say, Gordo, I mean, what? He took a bribe. That was like 20 years ago. So UEFA actually doubles down and says, nope, he's the right guy. I don't know if he's the right guy. As you can see, he's already wearing orange. So
honestly, they 100% did that on purpose. I know they did. Like, they really picked it. They had to go through the archives to find him in an orange
shirt. Yeah, but you don't see them wearing orange a lot.
Yeah. But this to me, this is just one of those things of, yes, everyone deserves a second chance. It was 20 years ago. Obviously, if that's the only dirt they pulled on him, he probably has not done it again since 2005, since he got his 6-month ban. However, with an organization like FIFA or UEFA, why would you make it like it's so easy? Like it's right in front of you, right? It's like, why give people another excuse to complain about the corruption? There's so many referees you could choose from. There's literally only 3 games left if you count the third place game, which I don't know who does, but there are 3 games left. Can he ref the third place game? Like there's not another.
No, actually, credit to Euros, they don't do that bullshit.
Oh, they don't.
From what I saw, yeah, because I didn't see one on the schedule. Copa America has one.
So there's only 2 games left.
Match. Thank freaking God.
You're telling me there's not another 2 referees that can do it? Even the same referee to ref this game in the final. There's nobody else. This is the guy they chose. It just seems like nothing against him. Like I said, it's probably the only time he hasn't done it since, but not in this big of a match, right? Because if anything goes wrong, this is exactly what people are going to point to. Right?
Right.
Yeah, or is it, John, is it so bad that, they're like, we don't definitely want anybody digging into the other guys. At least this guy only has one from like 19 years ago, kind of an ordeal. Because it is kind of but at the same time, it's not like, this guy did this and he just came out of probation and they're throwing him out there. He's been a ref all this time and obviously has done well. So I get it almost makes it like this article and most of the things I see online makes it look like they didn't have a ref. They called this guy here like, hey, we know we did this 20 years ago, but can you come back and ref this game? I mean, the dude has been all over the place doing his thing. So has he served his punishment already and moved on? Probably.
I mean, he's probably served his punishment, but then, the guys, whoever is in charge of the tournament certainly has a flair for the dramatic, right? Because if shit's like Gordon pretty much nailed everything on the head there. If something goes wrong, they all know who they're going to be looking at. Imagine if he comes out with an orange neon top tomorrow as well. It probably won't because it's gonna clash with the Netherlands uniforms. But I could just imagine the absolute.
He makes them change.
Right. He makes the change and everything. Like, oh boy, it's I don't know. It's just this sort of shit is just unique to the sport, isn't it? Like I can't get over it. It's kind of like putting Manchester-born referees in the Liverpool Man City or a Manchester United game. It's just like why?
Yeah, they would.
Why? Is it because the sport is much bigger? Because you do not. I mean, in American sports, there are certain refs that I'm like, this dumbass, like on NFL and stuff like that. But there is no like established scenarios and stuff like that similar to what we have in soccer. Is it because we analyze a lot more in soccer? Is it because soccer has a lot more gray area, like more judgment calls, you guys think? Or I mean, in the NFL there's like 30 refs walking around and this just happens to be the main guy. Like, why do you guys think that is? That I do feel like refereeing in soccer gets a lot more the magnifying glass, if you will, compared to other sports.
A decision is just absolutely detrimental or beneficial for a result. I think it's just the fact that it's just so high stakes.
Isn't that the same? In
not
basketball,
necessarily.
I can see what you mean, but in NFL, you can make a huge difference.
Yeah, you can make a huge difference, but it's more. I feel like the odds are more stacked against the team if the referee makes a wrong decision in soccer compared to other sports, if that makes sense, right? Because one bad call, like one missed offside or something like that could be the winning goal, right? And more often than not, like the Spurs situation last year, the Diaz thing, right, probably cost us a few points. The Arsenal thing and stuff like that. It's I don't know. Like, to your point, Tim, it said there's also a lot of instances with American sports as well, but I don't know. I feel like soccer is more moment to moment, I guess, in terms of
Spark is one man in the middle. So maybe the isolation is, that does make sense in a way where, like I say, in NFL, NBA has side guys too, but in the NFL, there's like another 20 guys running around, like calling different things and watching different things and stuff. But it is like, or is it the mortified? Every sport is kind of like a game of momentum in some ways, Gordo. But do you think it's just because, they can really turn the tide, like John is saying?
It's also it's the one sport where the ref is like universally hated, right? It's like,
That's what I mean. It's like very
There
big
is-
like that.
they like the teams disrespect the refs, the fans hate there are chants about the refs. Like, yes, like a referee in any of the other sports can also get bad calls. I can name a handful of referees in baseball and hockey that you don't want in your game. However, like, it's, I don't know, there's respect. Maybe there's more respect in other sports for referees than there is in soccer. And I think like what John says is like, it's how many NFL games are won with just like only one team scoring any points? Like, there's usually multiple times to score. How many soccer games are won 1-0, where like a goal means the game? Like one goal, one attack that you break down because of a bad call, or like you didn't call play on or something like that, totally destroys the game because there's only one opportunity to score. There's not many sports in which there's only one team scoring one time to win a game. And I think that might have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it is. Yeah, I mean that's true. Like we don't even hear. At least I don't, and I don't follow like basketball and stuff as closely as like John does. But I do, follow NFL closely, and like you don't get the referee announced for this weekend's game. Like I don't know who the hell is refereeing the 49ers game until they show up. Like I don't even know if they announced it, or like 49ers websites don't post it and say like, oh, it's this guy again or whatever. I turn on the TV and I say, oh, it's this guy again, but I don't see, you don't see it ahead of time, and maybe there is not as much of a focus over here. But let's talk about this since we're like really analyzing the sport over here. I don't know if you guys saw this. We spoke about Bielsa a little bit earlier, but he's talking about the football being in decline. Like more people watching doesn't mean it's good in the long. I mean, doesn't mean the sport is getting better. And he really criticized the hell out of the way soccer is heading. While I agree to some of it, I don't agree in the sense that he's talking about, Gordon. I don't know if you caught it at all, but
yes and no, and it's a little biased. Like I forget if it was this last week or the week before. I was just talking about like growing up in an era where like the wingers like were attacking play and they'd go straight at defenders and they'd attack. And now we get like more of a team build up where everybody is good on the ball, which sometimes I think leads to saying that the sport is worse or not as attractive anymore, because like your center back can also dribble all the way up the field and take a shot. Whereas like back in the day, it's like your defenders were pretty much the worst players on the team. And
hey.
I felt that. I'm a goalie. You couldn't really kick the ball, so like I felt that.
They pushed John so far back.
Yeah. Why do you think I'm the goalie for God's sake? I can barely kick the ball.
Why don't you catch the balls behind the goal? Like
yeah.
Your slower, lumbering players would.
I mean, you didn't have the technical, agile guys and defenders. Yeah, I get it.
And so, like now, because everybody is at like plays at such a high level, maybe it leads to the illusion that the game is like more boring to watch. And I think it's more of a chess game than it's ever been, right? Because like even like we talk about being Liverpool fans, like King Kenny, right? Like he was a very good, very talented player, but he played against some pretty awful opposition, in terms of like skill wise. And like, could he handle somebody like Virgil van Dijk, who's skillful on the ball and also has speed? I don't know. I mean, like it's, with being from Chicago and talking about different eras and like the LeBron and Jordan thing, I don't want to get into like, oh, could Kenny Dalglish survive in this day and age? No, it's like, it's impossible to do that. But what I'm saying is like everybody, all 11 players are the most talented athletes you could possibly field right now, and it has never been like that.
I guess. I mean, in that sense, I mean, I think was talking mainly about technology and stuff like that, and like the excitement of the sports and all that kind of stuff as well. I mean, I don't know. So I think Sir Z said sports in general seem more exciting 10, 20 years ago, and I do understand. Is that because of the fact that there was no VAR? Because he's talking about the VAR and the use of it is one of the reasons. It does a lot of harm to football. the sport has a particularity, and when it becomes completely predictable, it loses its appeal, he says. What do you make of that? I just feel like, yes, because 10, 20 years ago, or let's say 20 years ago, we did not even see this as an option, right? Like, it was what it was. And if you didn't know any better, then, it was great. So it's like when we had dial-in internet was the best thing ever. Now we laugh at Brian Shelton's dial-in internet. So is it like, John, is that because we didn't even fathom it? So 10, 20 years ago, we took it as it was. Whereas now it's almost like a lot of, especially your people, the younger generation, says, hey, there's all this technology we can use, to fix all this bullshit that we're complaining about. But at the same time, while it fixes those things, it does take away some of the good parts out of it.
And it creates new problems. Like you have all the technology in the world, but you got idiots who can't use it right. So that makes the sport. I get where he's coming from to an extent. What I understand in terms of, all right, this is my interpretation of why people say that the game isn't as good now. It's especially if you're looking at, so if we're looking at the best teams, you got Man City, obviously, who's probably the consensus in terms of talent-wise over the last few years, the best team in the world, right? Obviously, you talk about trophies and all that, but in terms of guy for guy, overall talent, it's probably them. And they're the ones who get brought into this argument the most because their play style is robotic, right? It's just a lot of guys doing the same things over and over again until they get a goal, which is more of a system thing, I feel. And that balance of individual brilliance plus chances created by the system, I feel like, is being leaned towards more of a systemic kind of deal where we're losing like these guys dribbling past three players and scoring top corner. No, because obviously that's not an efficient way to progress the ball. Let's say in a Pep Guardiola system, you want Kevin De Bruyne making this pass out wide instead of him trying to take on two players, which is easier on the eye. Right, him taking on two players and then lashing in that long shot, hitting top corner, right? Obviously, we saw more of that in the last few years. I feel the last few decades, for example, Steven Gerrard, right, who literally had to carry Liverpool on his back multiple times because things weren't working out. He didn't have the most talented players around him. But now you got teams like City who are just repeating the same motions over and over again, pass it to the center, overlap, cut back and stuff like that. It's just the same thing where I feel like in theory, it's great. It's great from a systemic point of view. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's dependent on the person. For example, guys like Serzi, who said that he doesn't really like how football has evolved. Maybe he prefers more, and obviously this might be me putting words into his mouth. Football back then was more individual brilliance, I guess, than great systems. And that might just be me simplifying it, right? But that's how I think it is, right? Because I feel like, and making it Liverpool, kind of about Liverpool, I feel like Klopp's system back then kind of hit both bases. Like there was a system there, but then after the gegenpress, when we get the ball back, it was all about what our players were going to do in the moment. There was no system about what we were going to do once we retrieve the ball and then what, right? Like we're high up the pitch. It's all on Mo Salah. It's all on Sadio Mane. It's all on Roberto Firmino to create something out of nothing, right? If that makes sense. So yeah, it's a conversation that I feel like is not going to end, right? But I feel like the best way to approach it is to try and see it both ways, right? Like we're seeing excellence in a different aspect of the game now as compared to like, let's say 10 years, 20 years before.
I think the game has changed where, I mean, and I agree, but that's mainly because, I don't know, Gordo, it feels like possession is a lot more important now. So teams are more focused on keeping the ball, keeping possession, making the other team work, defend, and stuff like that, as opposed to take those risks. So you don't have your winger going into like 3-4 guys because it's more important to recycle and find the opening somewhere else and make the defense move around and shift around and stuff like that. I'm sure it's analytics. Obviously, what they're doing now is more successful in terms of ratio and stuff like that, gives you a better possibility, keeps you on the ball and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, yes, it's not obviously as exciting to watch unless you have like a gegenpress and stuff like that. And I know hey, look, sometimes these systems are the only way. I mean, I was talking about this on Monday. Like, Turkey is a good tournament team because you got to defend and defend well. And it's a lot easier to get, especially international tournaments, it's a lot easier to get random people to come together and work in a defensive system as opposed to work together to break down a defensive system, because the latter takes a lot more cohesion and stuff like that, as opposed to keeping shape is a bit easier for players to understand and be on the same page for. But having said that, I don't think, those fans, we've had like a Burnley fan on here in the past talking about the Sean Douche years, and how Dyche's, yeah, it gets results, keeps you in the Premier League. But after a while, it's like, dude, can we just freaking attack? This is ridiculous at the same time, even to the fans towards the end. So do you think it's the style? Do you think it's the technology? Do you even agree, Gordo, that the sport is not as exciting? I know Sparky was talking about, that's another aspect of it, I think, that they can't tackle now. So I think it has become, and that is with every sport. I mean, it's the same thing with NFL. They can't even hit anymore, which they can't, to be fair. And it takes away a lot from the sport under the name of protecting players and stuff like that. Maybe they didn't present it like that, would be a lot more easier.
So 3 points from listening to you guys that might add confusion to all of this. So the first one is
great, bring it on.
this one be quick. There is a defensive strategy now, which in the past there was, it was just like, get the ball back. All right, we're playing 4-4-2. And you got to get the ball from the attackers, and then like there really was no defensive like strategy, right? Like there wasn't anything there. They invented the lines and like, oh, you're on the channels or whatever, and then you kind of everyone moves over and someone drops back. But there, in terms of a defensive strategy, there really wasn't. And now there is. Like, you play a certain way when you don't have the ball, and you play a certain way when you have the ball. When this is new in the last 20 years or so. So you could say that. It's harder to break down a team because they actually have an idea of what they're doing without the ball. Secondly, is there's always that nostalgia of like the only things you remember, because your brain, like just human brains are not really good at remembering, are the magic moments, right? And it's like, oh, I remember this and I remember that. Yeah, because that's all you remember. Sometimes when you watch those old ones, it's like you watch the Kenny Dalglish like running through the field and you're watching.
It's a shit show.
It's like, this is the worst fucking sport I've ever seen in my life. These guys are they're smoking at halftime. It's like these guys they're not athletic. Like some of the when the guys are like, oh, they can't tackle anymore. And then you watch some of the tackling, you're like, they couldn't tackle back then either. They were just they were just punching each other. There's nothing manly about that. It's like, it's like children. You watch them and they get up and they push each other. It's like, I don't want to watch that either. Like, that's boring to me too. But the third thing, which Sparky says about the energy, is we've gone way past it being like a hometown situation. Like my dad always talks about one of the Celtic teams in the 60s. They had 13 players. They've used 13 players the entire season. And I think only one of them was outside of a 50-mile radius of where Celtic actually played, like the stadium. So all of them lived within like an 11-mile radius of the stadium. And so like it was very much like a us versus you, and there was that passion where like these are our boys instead of like it being an international thing, which I definitely think takes away from it. I mean, you saw like with the team that we had this year, the two biggest disappointments we had were Everton and Man United. Because I feel like we had such a new team, they had no idea that like this is bigger than just like 19th place Everton and a very crappy United game. This means everything to both of these fan bases. It means everything to both these teams to knock us, down a peg. And both of them got to do that. And it's because it's lost that like small town mentality.
That's a good point. I mean, the whole rivalry thing, it's still there for fans, probably not as much for players. I know, like Joshua King was at Fenerbahce, and he could not even understand or comprehend why Fenerbahce was celebrating like they won the title when they beat Galatasaray away on the way to the title, just to carry it on to the last week and stuff like that. And he was like, I was reading his like his notes or whatever, like an interview he did, and he's like, I was so confused in the locker room because it was celebrating and stuff. Because this is in some ways the biggest game. Sometimes those games are bigger. And when you go back, those are the games you remember more. Talking about, like moments and memories and stuff like that. You remember specific games. Remember when we beat the shit out of them over here? I mean, that 7-0 game, we're going to remember that forever. Like the 5-0, you're going to remember these games. So I understand that part of it. I think, obviously money, as always, jacks things up. And that's why, these players jump around. You see everybody went to Saudi Arabia. Everybody's making an escape now after a year. But there are new ones going because I think people are like, dude, just come in for a year, cash in, leave, kind of an ordeal. So players are moving around for money at this point. Like they always were, I guess, John, but there wasn't this much money to move around for.
Yeah, and someone posted in the comments where it's like this in every sport. I agree. Because revenues are skyrocketing, media deals are skyrocketing. And in terms of like, from an American standpoint, like college players now can actually make money off of their name, image, and likeness, which is great in theory, right? Because like, obviously these guys are the ones who are playing on the court, everyone watching March Madness and all that, but then at the end of the day, these guys get paid already an X amount of money and they haven't even made the pros yet. So if you're looking at it from a certain perspective, hey, I've made it. I don't need to strive anymore. Like, I got that bag, right? Like, I don't need to take another level, maybe win a championship with my team anymore. So there is that mentality as well. And that can translate to a football level where, we got these guys hyped up like hell. Like, obviously, we talked about the kid that was just signed in the academy, right? Like, obviously, Liverpool have a certain wage structure that we broke. I'm not saying that he's going to be that kind of player, but that can get to a player's head. Like, oh, look at these guys. They broke the wage structure from me. I'm the real deal, right? I mean, look at going back a few years, Rian Brewster, right? Everyone thought he was going to be the hottest shit in the world. Where is he now?
Good money for him, that's for sure.
Yeah, we got money for him, but like, where is he now? So, listen, it's a double-edged sword in terms of the money argument. And I think personally, I think it's leaning towards more of the disadvantageous part of a player coming in, a new player coming in terms of motivation for current players to go to that next level. Because listen, I can't blame them. If you get a max contract somewhere, you get like 200 million. Listen, man, that's like generational wealth times 7. So I can't understand why you want to take your foot off the gas a little bit. Like, I can't even blame you. But at the end of the day, for the sport as a whole, is it good? Not really.
Yeah, we should have like this is going to be like an old grumpy man episode more than anything. Yes, and I think maybe that's because, going back to the money thing and some of the stuff like John is talking about, Gordo. I mean, I don't remember, or I wasn't following it as closely or looking into that aspect of it, or it just was not there. There's a lot more business and economical sides to the clubs now and how the clubs handle players as well. We were talking about Sepp earlier, like Brewster and stuff. These guys are also seen as a commodity by the clubs now. I don't, like I say, maybe I just shut it off from my memory. Anybody who's old, like Sparky, can like maybe like tell us in the comments. Maybe I'm not remembering it, but it wasn't as much of an economical aspect in terms of like, oh, they're investing in him and stuff like that. You were good, you freaking played. You weren't good, you did not play. It wasn't like, but maybe we can do that and then sell him for 5. We go get this guy for 8. There wasn't all this other mathematical like economy stuff in the background. It was more about developing talent. He's good. He makes it. If he doesn't make it, oh well. I think the business side of it has to have evolved to make money, because you need money for these things, Gordo. Is that part of the ordeal that takes away from the overall passion of things? Because obviously once business enters, it's not as fun anymore.
Yeah, and it's down to 2 things really, and it's similar. I know we always go back to the NBA, but you guys like the NBA, so I'll bring it back there. But there's like
hey, calm down. Slow down on that liking the NBA thing. That's more John over here.
There's an NBA there's an NBA before Jordan and there's an NBA after Jordan, because he brought the shoe deal, he brought all the extra commodities, and then there is a European football before David Beckham and a European football after David Beckham. So it's still relatively new, because I think he is one of the first. I mean, you could argue George Best was like the first superstar, and it obviously went to his head with football because of everything that happened with him after. But in terms of marketing yourself outside of the game, David Beckham was arguably the first person to do that successfully, and to become and to make other commodities out of other players, because everyone wanted to strive to be him, because not only was he at the top of the game in the game, but he was at the top of the game outside of the game as well. He was one of the biggest names in the world. I mean, there was a point in time when like every kid shaved his head when David Beckham shaved his head. I mean, that stuff, he transcended the sport, and everyone wants to be that. So you have to manage those players and those expectations, because they're all trying to do that outside of the game as well now. The other side of it is, on the tactical side, is you get a couple of successful, and now it's transcend. It's a little bit with the internet and how available all these other sports and stuff is to see and to read, is you get a successful model outside that works and wins championships, whatever that championship may be. Everyone tries to emulate it. Like you could argue Moneyball with the Red Sox. It's like that worked. It brought them the first championship in X number of years, and it was a good, solid business model, and everyone wants to do the same thing. So you see that happen elsewhere, and you try and emulate it. I'm watching Wrexham closely, because I think we'll see that more and more and more, because I think that the business model that they're doing right now is totally different than we've ever seen, and it's very successful, not only from a marketing point of view, but also results. They're getting results on the field, and I think
do you think it will be copied though? I just, like, real quick, because the Wrexham thing is unique because it's unique, and this is the first time somebody's doing it in this way. If you had 10 Wrexhams, would they have the same impact that what they brought? Because it's not like Ryan Reynolds is like a big star or whatever, but he's not the biggest star. You know what I mean? But just the fact that they took it and doing it the way they are. If you had 10 different ones that are Wrexham, would it be as successful if it's copied?
I think you could argue yes, because outside of the football, he's also like totally revitalized the city. And so if you do that to a place like, Newcastle, and build something up, like for instance, Sunderland, we all watch them cry on Netflix, right? You build up a town like that was once a very important part of the country that is kind of shied upon now, and kind of like a despot of the country, and you bring that back up and have the fan base and even the community that doesn't support the team kind of feel revitalized by bringing in revenue. That's only a good thing. But
isn't that mostly because of the TV show and all that kind of stuff? It gets so much attention, so you can get so much sponsor money. If there were like 10, 15, 20 of these, would they get the same investment? I guess that's where I'm, not as optimistic.
Yeah, I don't think it would be as fun to watch it happen for the 20th time, but it doesn't mean it won't be. But it doesn't mean it won't be successful in terms of like revitalizing the city and also the football. You're not going to get 60 Hulu documentaries like Welcome to Wrexham. They capitalize on a market that really wasn't exploited. But you definitely are going to get more and more, really rich celebrities buying teams and investing. If they do it right, it works. That's the best part about that, because nobody believed it would work. Everyone thought it was just, hilarious. And then you watch the documentary, and the way they're going about it is phenomenal, in my opinion. And it's fun to watch. You can't not root for them, because what they're doing is pure. They're doing it for the football, and they actually really do care about the players, their families, and the community. And so I don't see how that couldn't translate 20 more times. We won't get the documentary aspect of it.
See, I just think that if you don't get the documentary aspect of it and that income from there and the attention from there that brings even more income, I just feel like, John, it would not be as successful. It will still impact and be a positive impact probably in the community, but I don't see it being as successful just because it's been done. It's been there, done that kind of an ordeal. And if you don't have that show, if you don't have the sponsors, if you don't have all these things pushing it and driving it, regardless, there's a lot of rich people own clubs that can't really drive it. The celebrity aspect of it comes into play, I think, when you can get on TV and, do things that way.
Yeah, first of all, I got to watch that show. I got to get that Hulu.
I think I stopped after a couple of seasons. I got to go back.
Yeah, you got to get that Hulu. I watched the Sunderland, though, and that was pretty sad. I can't imagine.
Yeah, that was a gut punch at the very end as well, but it was
and they lost again.
Yeah, like at the first few episodes as well, the build up was like insane. You think it's like this, you think it's like a movie because it's on Netflix and everything. And they lose their first game by 1-0. Like I think it was because of a penalty as well, like the most anticlimactic thing ever. And I was like, oh, so this is the kind of series that this is gonna be, huh? Like really, it's but yeah, I mean, what might work against them, what you were saying, Tim, if everyone does it, might be the saturation kind of deal.
Yeah.
But then I can't really say too much about it because I haven't watched the damn thing, and I probably should, right? But then in terms of, yeah, it's a copycat league. That's what they say over here in the States. That applies to every sport, I feel. Like in terms of, hey, like for example, the Warriors, they won their first title. Everyone started shooting threes. Ooh, threes is like the big commodity now. I feel like that's the same thing with football. Like, oh, Pep's won the Premier League title the last 5-6 years. Every big team now wants to play in possession. Right? Even Liverpool, like Klopp kind of shifted the style a little bit to be more possession based because he realized like 90% of the teams we're going to face in the league, we're going to have like 90% of the ball anyway. And to be fair, it was a practical change, but then it was a change that was that came upon by looking at that model, that Pep model. So yeah, totally agree that it's definitely something that is once someone succeeds with it, everyone's just like, yeah, might try that, right?
I mean, Sparky says once the bubble bursts, it'll drop like a stone. But I think going back to what Gordo was saying, a lot has been done for the city. If nothing else, those stay. The club might drop, and I don't think us as neutrals care as much about Wrexham Football Club's success. You kind of enjoy more about, like what it brings to the city and stuff. This is kind of freaky, by the way, because I do see timestamps over here. So literally, Serzi asked this, and then Anand asked it at the same exact time. So they were literally typing it simultaneously. I'm assuming it's being edited over here, and poor Anand over here. I know he's hurting. We did play some FIFA the other night, so I know he's in pain. So, moment of silence for Anand's.
Man, you slapped him on you slapped him on FIFA like the moment after Thiago retires. Like it's not been a good few days.
I know it wasn't fair. I kicked him while he was down. Yeah,
it doesn't get lower. You're the one that's supposed to be rallying the troops and getting us all about doing it. You just
what, man? No pain, no gain. So
Tim is like, why beat them now when I can crush them later?
Yeah, and then he was kind of like going with that. He says it's his cousin. Well, your cousin sucks at FIFA, bro. No, it was actually some fun games, but Anand is not bad, by the way. We should, if we ever do finish that tournament on Discord, Anand is not as bad as advertised, but it was fun times. Real quick as we go, let's finish with some predictions. 2 semifinals going on today. England, Netherlands. Go to, let's start with you.
I said it last week. They're gonna Inspector Clouseau their way to the final. We're gonna watch one of the most electric and beautiful teams that literally been playing that way since the start of the tournament in Spain get bogged down in a quagmire of Southgate's ineptitude, and England are going to win 1-0. Harry Kane's going to score, and everyone's going to forgive him. It's going to be England all the way, and it's not going to be pretty, and no one's going to be happy about it except the English.
Yeah, I think so. Thiago is joining the Barca coaching staff. I would think they're going to use him in the physio room due to his extensive experience over there. But John, England, Netherlands.
I think Netherlands steal it with a last-minute goal.
I hate to say it's close your ears there, Sparky, but I am actually kind of like wants Netherlands to win. We have more boys there, if nothing else. So, and then that way I can say Turkey lost to the finalists too. So there's an additional pressure there. Uruguay, Colombia. John.
Uruguay. Nunez again gives us a sign, right? He gives us a sign.
What is the sign, man? I literally watched like 30-40 minutes of a game the other day. I was like, it's the same Nunez. It's just that,
what's the difference? It's actually going in.
Yeah, but it's going in after like 10 times. Like, he should have a hat trick by the time he actually scores. I don't think, we don't watch it as closely to say, oh, God, he missed all those and stuff like that. And then, it's Uruguay if he does. Netherlands, 3-1 wins. Sparky says England after penalties. I have Colombia today. Diaz, I feel like they're a better team overall. But Gordo, who do you have?
I do. I think it's going to be Uruguay. I'm with John. I think they're going to win the game. I think Colombia is definitely the better team, but they also play Panama, and they beat them 5-0. So sometimes you see that when you don't really have to play a game, and then Uruguay went all the way to penalties with Brazil. They're kind of more prepared for it. They've already played tougher opposition.
Yeah, it's going to be a painful watch. I mean, we were talking about it right before we went on air. That ball, it's going to be a foul every 10 seconds in that game. But the dust has settled. So let's get winner predictions as well. So are you going with an ugly England final win then, Gordo, for the Euros?
Yeah, it doesn't feel right to say. There's just something in my gut that says that they're just going to bore everyone all the way to the end, and Southgate will get to keep his job. What I will say is I heard a stat that from 1968 until 2016 when he was appointed, England won 5 knockout games. In the span from 2016 to today, it's been 6 wins. So even though it's not pretty,
yes,
I don't know.
Effective, but ridiculously ugly. I am rooting for Spain because I feel like I agree they've been the best team, and they're like the most fun team to watch, and I think they should be rewarded for that. But I do have a feeling you're right, Gordo, that's not going to get rewarded. The safe approach is going to get rewarded. John, you're shaking your head, so I assume you agree with that.
No, I'm going with the naive approach, man. I'm going with the Netherlands making it all the way, but it's just not enough. Because I think Spain, I want Spain to win as well, because in terms of how we see football being played, that's how it should be played. It's very naive, right? It's very naive, but I want them to win just for the integrity of the sport. Especially if England come in and try and stink up the place. Yeah, I hope Spain wins it.
Copa America, any surprise the Argentina winning, or they're just gonna literally walk into the trophy room and just grab it and go out?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's looking more and more like a drive-by over there. They were like, "What? Okay, we'll just pick it up and go," kind of an ordeal. That was a good game yesterday, though. I know we didn't get to Canada. I just watched the highlights. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I was quite impressed with what Canada was at least able to pull off. But we won't get U.S. national team fans going any more than we have to on a Wednesday morning. But the boys will be back tomorrow night, and they might be able to do that, and they'll know the finalists, so I'm sure they'll talk a lot about the final as well. So do tune in for that. 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. A lot of new content coming up. We should be announcing that later today or tomorrow for Patreon this month as well. A lot of stuff in July. So if you have not done so already, all this content is still free until the season kicks in. So head on over there and join in. Walker will kill Gakpo tonight, says Sparky.
Yeah, if Walker can figure out where to position himself, sure.
Yeah, that's like an interesting matchup, actually. So that's something to watch. But have an awesome day, everybody. Enjoy the games today, and I'll see you guys personally on Friday morning. Take care.